Many people write Ringo Starr off, but there's a side to his story that almost everyone misses. For years, he was criticized, overlooked, even ridiculed. And yet, inside the most influential band in history, he was deeply respected, even admired. How is it possible for the same man to be seen as a punchline and as a genius? Today we're exploring the story of Ringo Starr, the most misunderstood Beatle, whose true value was hidden in plain sight for decades, until the people who actually know music started to speak up. Let's get into it. Richard Starkey was born on July 7, 1940, in a humble Liverpool neighborhood known as the Dingle, a world of gray streets, modest homes, and limited opportunities. His father left when he was only 3, leaving his mother, Elsie, to work any job she could find just to keep the family afloat. With no support and very little money, things were precarious. But the hardships didn't stop there. At age 6, Richard's appendix burst. He developed peritonitis and fell into a coma that lasted 10 weeks, a critical period that left him on the brink of death. As if that wasn't enough, at 13, he was struck down by pleurisy, which forced him into a children's hospital for 2 long years. Can you imagine being stuck in bed at that age, watching other kids go to school while you could barely breathe? That was Richard's childhood, the sterile halls of a hospital. But it was there, during the long hours of boredom, that he started tapping on a makeshift drum kit made of tins and wood. Later, he graduated to the toy drums in the hospital's music room. Without even realizing it, he'd found a source of comfort. When he played, the sadness faded, and his problems seemed to disappear just for a moment. But when he finally left the hospital and returned home, an unexpected new reality was waiting for him. After finally overcoming his health issues, Richard came home to a major change. His mother had started a new life with a new partner. This new family member, Harry Greaves, wouldn't just change the dynamic at home. Luckily for Richard, he would play a key role in helping him chase his dream. But first, reality hit hard. Trying to re-enter the world, Richard faced the challenge of finding a job with no formal education to back him up, a direct result of all those years spent in the hospital. His reading and writing skills were limited. Harry tried to help, getting him a job as a messenger boy, but Richard was fired after failing the medical exam. Later, he landed a job as a trainee joiner at an engineering firm, but he quickly quit after realizing his heart wasn't in it. He felt lost. But right around this time, the Ringo Starr we know was about to be born. Despite these setbacks, Richard knew where his true passion was: music and drumming. His stepfather Harry saw his enthusiasm and bought him a second-hand drum kit, a gesture that would become a massive turning point in his life. With a real kit, Richard dove headfirst into his love for music, especially the skiffle craze that was sweeping through Britain. He also found inspiration in American blues and rock and roll, sounds that were just starting to make their mark on the UK music scene. This blend of influences became the foundation for his future. Richard started playing in several local bands, but his big break came when he joined Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, a group that was already a pretty big deal in Liverpool. It was then that he adopted the stage name Ringo Starr, partly because of all the rings he wore, and partly to make his drum solos, which he called Star Time, sound more like an event. Ringo was already a unique character, a left-handed drummer playing a right-handed kit. This quirk forced him to approach the drums differently, giving his playing an unconventional, almost magical feel. Richard Starkey was gone. He was now Ringo Starr, a drummer with undeniable charisma and a smile that lit up every stage he was on. And on tour, Ringo would soon catch the eye of another band, one that was destined to change the history of rock forever. While Ringo was touring with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, he kept crossing paths with a 4-piece band that wasn't famous yet, but you could tell they had something special. That band was the Beatles, made up of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and their drummer at the time, Pete Best. Both groups played the same circuit, especially in the rowdy clubs of Hamburg, Germany, where the nights were fueled by rock and roll and raw energy. In that wild atmosphere, Ringo and the other Beatles hit it off immediately. Those nights of music and friendship in Hamburg built a strong bond. So strong, in fact, that whenever Pete Best couldn't make a gig, Ringo would sit in with the Beatles. They just clicked, both personally and musically. Then, in August 1962, came the decision that changed music history. John, Paul, and George decided to replace Pete Best, and Ringo was the only man they wanted. The decision caused an uproar among the band's local fans, many of whom loved Pete. Even George Martin, the producer who would guide their career, had his doubts about whether Ringo was the right choice. But the band held their ground, and Ringo very quickly proved his worth. His style was the perfect fit for the sound Lennon and McCartney were crafting. Have you ever wondered how different Beatles' history would be if another drummer, with a totally different style, had taken that seat? Just like that, Ringo had found his place in the most promising band in the world. But standing alongside three creative geniuses like John, Paul, and George wasn't going to be easy. With Ringo on board, the Beatles began to lock in the sound that would launch them into the stratosphere. Their first major hits, Please Please Me and Love Me Do, landed in '63 and were a game changer. Please Please Me shot up the British charts and officially kicked off the frenzy known as Beatlemania, fueled by their non-stop TV and radio appearances. By the end of that year, the Beatles were a phenomenon in Britain and were ready to conquer the world. But with fame came comparisons. John Lennon and Paul McCartney were hailed as creative geniuses. George Harrison was emerging as a brilliant songwriter in his own right. And Ringo? He was often pushed to the background, labeled the lucky one, or the least talented Beatle. Many critics claimed his technique wasn't as flashy as other drummers of the era, but that simplicity was his secret weapon. Ringo never overplayed. He provided a rock-solid foundation that allowed the melodies and harmonies to shine. On top of that, his easygoing, charismatic personality was the anchor that kept the band grounded during moments of intense pressure and tension. Could the band have survived the strain of global fame without Ringo's steady hand and calming sense of humor? It's unlikely. Still, the weight of being seen as the weakest link in a group of superstars began to take its toll. He wasn't a prolific songwriter like John and Paul, or an enigmatic musician like George. But Ringo was always there, sticks in hand and a smile on his face, ready to make every single song sound perfect. From here, we all know the story of the Beatles' global domination. They were unstoppable. And as the band evolved from their early rock and roll sound to more experimental music, Ringo evolved with them. Songs like Ticket to Ride showcase his ability to create beats that nobody else would have thought of. She don't care. His unique fills and the way he tuned his drums gave their songs a distinctive color that became the bedrock of a musical revolution. Have you ever really listened to the drums on Come Together? It's a perfect example of how, without flashy solos, Ringo could lay down a hypnotic, swampy groove that becomes the central hook of the song. And Ringo wasn't just a drummer. Every now and then, he stepped up to the mic to sing lead on tracks like With a Little Help from My Friends and Yellow Submarine. I get by with a little help from my friends. We all live in a yellow submarine. These simple, charming songs not only became fan favorites, but they also showed a softer, more playful side of the band. Would the friendly, colorful image of the Beatles have been the same without Ringo's signature contributions? As time went on, the criticism of Ringo's simple style slowly transformed into deep admiration. Modern drumming legends like Dave Grohl of Nirvana and Foo Fighters have openly stated that Ringo's powerful song-first approach is a massive influence on them.
With their own feel, Ringo was the king of feel.
Phil Collins, a drummer known for his incredible chops, has also cited Ringo's influence.
Ringo, fantastic drummer. Fantastic drummer.
Even Paul McCartney, a notorious perfectionist, has said time and time again that Ringo was simply the best drummer for the Beatles. So why did it take so long for people to recognize his genius? Maybe because Ringo's brilliance wasn't about flashy, look-at-me virtuosity. It was about his impeccable timing, his unique feel, and his infallible instinct for what a song needed. How many times have we heard that the hardest part of music is knowing what not to play? That was Ringo's specialty. He left space for the music to breathe, something very few drummers ever truly master. If the Beatles were a puzzle made of 4 exceptional talents, Ringo was the piece that made the entire picture complete. Time has proven that his work wasn't just important. It set a new standard for generations of drummers to come.
Before continuing, I invite you to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any of our videos about rock legends. We upload videos every week, so let's continue.
After the Beatles broke up in 1970, Ringo faced one of the biggest challenges of his life. While the world watched skeptically, he answered the critics with his hit 1973 album Ringo, proving that his talent went far beyond just being a sideman. But for Ringo, music was always more than just hits and recognition. It was his sanctuary. With the creation of his all-star band in 1989, Ringo brought his musical vision to life, a collaborative, ego-free space. The project not only revived his career, but allowed him to share the stage with incredible musicians from different generations, all while spreading his trademark message of peace and love. In every show, Ringo radiates a positivity that has made him a symbol of resilience, successfully rising above the comparisons that had followed him for years. Though he was often underestimated, he received the ultimate recognition in 2015 when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist. The honor was a final validation of his talent and influence, one built not on dazzling solos, but on his profound ability to feel a song and serve it with taste and precision. Ringo Starr's legacy is a reminder that genius isn't always loud and complex. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time, providing the perfect balance and harmony. Though he stood in the shadow of his legendary bandmates, he found the key to transcending it all, proving that true greatness lies not in being the flashiest, but in being completely and utterly yourself. Through music, Ringo found what he was searching for ever since those days in the hospital corridors: a cure for pain, a path to joy, and a way to share his heart with the world. You've probably heard the famous quote, "Ringo wasn't the best drummer in the world. He wasn't even the best drummer in the Beatles," and seen it attributed to John Lennon. Well, that's a complete myth that's been debunked many times. According to Beatles historian Mark Lewison, that line was actually a joke told by a British comedian back in 1983. But you know what John Lennon did say? He once said, "If you tried to give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry." If you want to find out why Chuck Berry is considered by many to be the true king of rock and roll, you won't want to miss our next video. Click here to dive into his incredible story.